I'm excited to share with you this morning because we are in week 11 of 11 weeks in the book of Nehemiah. The book of Nehemiah is a book that's all about renewal. It's all about rebuilding. It's all about restoration, partly restoring a wall, partly restoring people. And so I'm excited to kind of close out our series in Nehemiah. Let me first tell you something that I've been learning about in my life, and that is this. Changing diapers teaches you a lot about life. And let me identify one thing that changing diapers teaches you about life. It occurred to me very early on that babies will utilize their diaper whenever they feel like it. That's kind of the point of diapers, am I right? The frustrating thing is, I'm a very neat and tidy person. I also really pride myself in being efficient. I am a very efficient person. I go throughout my day looking for the most efficient way to do things. If I get into an argument with my wife about directions, it's because I'm looking for the most efficient way to get somewhere. So God bless the Waze app or whatever else you guys are in love with, but sometimes I just feel like it's not the most efficient way to get somewhere. I'm all about efficiency, and I'm all about neatness and tidiness. If you put those two together into the proposition of changing diapers, you are hosed. Because first of all, it is not a tidy endeavor, and secondly, it's hard to be efficient. And here's an example. You decide that you need to change your baby's diaper. I have a 7-month-old, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to put it off for as long as possible, right? That sounds like bad parenting, but you're thinking, it was like probably 15, 20 minutes ago. I don't want to be in danger of it happening within moments of changing the diaper, right? And sometimes these accidents take a half hour to an hour to really work themselves out. So you think, I'm going to give him every last chance to utilize that diaper well. I don't want to change it if it's a half-see, right? Like, I don't want to change it if it's been barely utilized. I'm going to give him time. Work it out, son. I'm giving you space. And then, in my wisdom, when I deem all of the items in the diaper to be full, I go, yes, now is the time. And so you set him down, you open it up, you have that moment of like tears, and it's just bizarre. And then you change it, and he's grabbing for the dirty diaper, and you're like, no, don't put your hand there, because then your hands immediately go into your mouth. This is getting weird. Don't do that. And then there's just like, he's like, his body's just hitting himself in weird places. It's a mess. And you give him a toy to try and figure that out, and you finally get a brand new diaper on. And you're like, wow, I'm glad I only have to do this 8 times a day, right? Without fail, what happens 7 minutes later? I'm not sure what the best sound effect would be right here, so insert your own sound effect. But release happens in a matter of time. And it's fun, and it's parenting, and you're like, yes, okay, well, I'm glad your bowels are moving. It's something that you strangely get excited about as a parent, especially in the early going. They're pooping, this is amazing. 4 poops today, this is radical. I mean, you're excited that they pooped 4 times, and then you're just thinking, when do they start pooping once a day like a normal person? When does this happen? All that aside, here's what it teaches me about life. Are you ready? Now that it took me 7 minutes to get here. I think living life is a lot like changing diapers, because just when you feel like you have a moment of success, just when you feel like you have a moment of growth, just when you feel like you have a season of life where things are going well, where you are being sanctified and just learning about the wonders of the Lord, just when you feel like you're on fire, whatever that means, just when you feel like you're in the zone, you mess your diaper again. Without fail. Metaphorically speaking, of course. And this is what life is like, right? I mean, we are accustomed to this in life. We are accustomed to the ups and downs, the highs and lows of life. We're accustomed to hitting our stride only to trip. We're accustomed to experiencing great joy only to stumble into sadness. We're accustomed to cleaning ourselves up or having ourselves cleaned up only to find ourselves with a dirty diaper all over again. This is life. And every time I change my son's diaper, I think, yeah, That's about right. That's life. Time to clean up. What I want to do this morning, as we wrap up the series, is I want to do two things. I want to acknowledge, first of all, that life is full of ups and downs. That your heart, that your soul, your very being is constantly going to be subjected to ups and downs in life, highs and lows. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're just not being honest. If anyone tells you that Christianity is that's the solution to all of your problems, just getting married is the solution to all of your problems. You won't be lonely once you get married. Having kids, that's a solution. Getting that promotion, like once you get if anyone tells you that your problems ever change based on anything, they just haven't lived long enough to tell you that life will always be full of ups and downs. And I've said this before in here, I'll say it again. At the tender age of 32, I am convinced life only gets more complicated. And maybe people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s in here might say amen, but I'm convinced that life only gets more complicated. So if you're a sophomore in college and you think, this is as crazy as life will ever get, buckle up. That is as simple as life will ever get. Well, now, pooping yourself on a changing table is probably the simplest life will ever get. From that point on, it's all downhill. So the first thing I want to do is normalize that. I want to normalize that journey. I want to normalize the ups and downs of life. The second thing I want to just consider for us is, what do we do in light of that? What do we do given that that is the trajectory of life? What do we do as people of God, knowing that we are constantly going to face nearness, distance, highs, lows? And as we wrap up Nehemiah, I think you might be surprised. It's not a very exciting ending. It's actually a really strange ending to a pretty incredible story. The ending is just like, oh, interesting. Let me recap for you in about a minute the entire book of Nehemiah up until chapter 13. And Gabby's going to fly with me on the slides. But we started in Nehemiah chapter 1. Where Jerusalem is completely in ruins. The people are living in sin. Some have returned back to Jerusalem from being in exile, and Nehemiah finds out that the city of David, just God's capital city, is completely destroyed. That's a low point. Then God gives Nehemiah great vision, purpose. He actually gets permission from King Artaxerxes, the Persian king, to go in 444 BC. This is all documented. He goes back to Jerusalem. They begin rebuilding the wall, which is a high, and an even higher high is that in chapter 3, we see that the work begins. And on the next, problems within that community are maybe worse than the problems outside. They're stealing from one another, taking advantage of one another, exploiting one another, buying one another into slavery. I mean, can you imagine this in our context? That is as low as it gets. But then Nehemiah rallies them. They rebuild the wall finally in chapter 6. Revival breaks out in chapters 7 and 8. In chapters 9 through 12, we read about how they basically say, we are in. God, we are in. Based on everything that's happened, we are in. We see now that you're not just interested in rebuilding the wall. We see now that you're interested in rebuilding us, and we're in. We're not going to let anything come between our relationship with you. We understand now, based on your faithfulness and your goodness to us. We've seen it in our ancestors. We see it all the way to today. Based on all of this, we're in. We're in. And they celebrate, and they send 2 choirs around the walls, and they party, and it says the cries from Jerusalem, the praises from Jerusalem could be heard from far away. I wish Nehemiah ended in chapter 12, because that's an ending. I mean, that is an ending. That's a Hollywood ending. But it's not a real life ending. Real life ending is Nehemiah, lucky chapter 13. Turn, if you would, to Nehemiah 13. Let me just highlight for you a couple of ways these people are challenged. And there's a question mark there because these people's story, I think, is close to ours. In the highs and lows of your life, when you have those moments of refreshment and renewal, undoubtedly, unavoidably, what comes are question marks. And what we see are these people have some trouble really staying passionate about all these things they committed themselves to. So I want to walk you through a couple challenges they faced. The first challenge is this. On the next slide, I wrote it this way. Like them, we will be tempted to compromise our commitment to do church. To do church for us is to live in community, to make this place a priority, to live intentionally with one another, to wake up on a Sunday morning, even though your football team is playing at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or maybe you're missing the Major League Baseball playoffs. I mean, to commit to do church, to commit to be in a group, to care for other people, to carry their burdens, to live life with them. Your commitment to do that is always going to be compromised. And I felt it. My exact words to Pat, I won't say what day. It was this morning. I'll just confess. This morning, I was like, man, if I didn't have to, I wouldn't go to church today. I said that this morning. Not because I don't love you guys, because it's been a crazy week. It's exhausting and just a busy week. And Caleb's just been deciding to not sleep great, so I'll blame it on him these last couple days. And I just had a moment. Now, give me some grace, because you say this every morning. But I had this moment right after I woke up where I was like, oh, man, this would be one of those mornings that if I was just a churchgoer and not like one of the pastors, I might bail. Now, I think there are times where it's okay to not go to church, right? You have freedom to not come. Most of you are, I know that this is your home. Life happens. But your commitment to us, your commitment to one another, not even to me, because this is not about anybody up here. This is about us as a family. Your commitment to one another will always be compromised. We see this here. If you want to read along with me, it might be up on the screen, actually. I'm going to read verses 4 through 7 and then verse 10. Here's what we read. Now Eliashib the priest, who was appointed over the chambers of the house of our God, and who was related to Tobiah, who, by the way, was a huge troublemaker, Eliashib prepared for Tobiah a large chamber where they had previously put the grain offering, the frankincense, the vessels, and the tithes of grain, the wine, and the oil, which were given by commandment to the Levites and the singers and the gatekeepers, and the contributions for the priests. But while this was taking place, I, Nehemiah, was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes of Babylon, I went to the king. After some time, I asked to leave the king, and I came back to Jerusalem, and I discovered the evil that Eliashib had done for Tobiah, preparing for him a chamber in the courts of the house of God. And then in verse 10 we read, I also found out that the portions of the Levites had not been given to them, so that the Levites and the singers who did the work had to flee each to his own field. So this very first sin that these people are dealing with, this challenge that they're dealing with is, man, after time goes by, our commitment to set aside food and resources for the people to take care of worship, not important. Our dedication to the house of God and like valuing church, let's rent that room out. Oh, and we got like holy sacraments in there, holy wine in there, like grains that are grain offerings. Put them outside. I don't know. And there's a temptation. This is just several years after this huge high. There's this temptation for these people to just compromise their commitment to the house of God. And for us, that looks like church. And so I ask you, man, wherever life is happening for you right now, do you sense that? Do you sense that challenge? It's very real. And I don't communicate this to you with guilt or shame. I just communicate to you, do you sense that? Do you sense in your heart an apathy at times about doing church? Do you find yourself not wanting to engage with other people because it's simpler to withdraw? It's simpler to isolate. It's simpler to deal with problems on your own. Deal with problems with big sarcastic quotation marks. Is it easier for us to do that? Is it easier to wake up and say, man, it'd be hard for me to go today if I didn't have, I was just so tired. I'm not here to tell you you can't take a day off. I'm not here to tell you you don't need rest. I'm not here to tell you that your salvation is dependent upon you coming here. I'm here to enlighten you and to draw attention to the fact that in the course of your Christian life, you will be tempted to compromise your commitment to do church with people. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to prioritize this. I'm not even going to make this about giving. It's not. This is about prioritizing church. This is who we have. I'm convinced, like this is who we have. You are one another's people. If we don't have one another in life, like, it's not God's design. We're better together. So maybe before you leave today, you can find someone and say, You're my people. You're my person. I'm your people. We are a people. We are people. See you later. She's like, I'm not signing up for this. I'll hear about this later. My simple encouragement to us is that we be aware of this challenge. The second challenge is this. God has proven time and time again that he wants to be friends with you. He doesn't just want to be your God. He doesn't just want to be your Savior. He doesn't just want to be your Lord. He wants to be your friend. He wants to do life with you. He wants to walk through life with you, and that requires some partnership on our end. And what we see, the second challenge that we will face is that it's going to always be challenging to prioritize that friendship with God. It just is. Prioritizing your friendship with God is going to be a challenge, always will be. We see this in Nehemiah chapter 13. Let me read verses 17 through 22. We read this. I confronted the nobles of Judah, which is the area Jerusalem's in. And I said to them, what is this evil thing that you're doing? You're profaning the Sabbath day. Did not your fathers act this way? And did not our God bring all this disaster on us in this city? And now again, you are bringing more wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath? As soon as it began to grow dark at the gates of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I commanded that the doors should be shut. And I gave orders that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath. I stationed some of my servants at the gate that no load might be brought in on the Sabbath day. And he goes on to say some of the merchants would go and they would camp out outside the gates, waiting for the Sabbath to end. All because in verses 15 and 16, which I think is what I was supposed to read, in verses 15 and 16, we see these people that just say, we're going to sacrifice our day of rest for work. Sound familiar? I'm going to sacrifice our day of rest for work. You and I have extremely full lives. We have extremely busy schedules. And it is so easy for us to not prioritize friendship with God. Here's what I love. I am not telling you that you need to read the Bible more. I'm not telling you that you need to pray more. I'm not telling you that your friendship with God is incumbent upon you reading a devotional. I'm not telling you that you need to read the Bible in a year. You want to know what Nehemiah told the people to do to restore their friendship with God? Nothing. Honor the Sabbath, on which you're supposed to do nothing. You want to find some new passion with God? Put the books down and do nothing. Sabbath, rest. There's no mistaking that God connects with you and I through us doing nothing. And so much of the laws that we read about in the Old Testament are about the Sabbath. Oh, by the way, let's spell out for you what you should not do on the Sabbath. Rest. Be intentional about doing nothing. And so I've had people that have come to me and say, Brent, I just feel like, man, church is a lot right now. I'm working 7 days a week. I could really use the rest. You want to know what I tell them? Don't come to church. Sleep in and be intentional with your time. Next week at 10 a.m., instead of coming here in this madness, go on a hike. Go on a hike at 10 a.m. next week and be with God. Because he might meet you there more than he'll meet you in this circus, right? You don't got to put your makeup on. You don't got to get all dressed up. You don't have to become whatever it is you think we need on Sundays. Don't mess with it. Get in a car by yourself and go hiking. That's your Sabbath. God will probably meet you there. And so I'm wondering for us, do we prioritize our friendship with God by doing nothing? By resting? By being intentional? I might be the first pastor you've heard in a long time that has told you to, read less. Read less. The Bible in a year is great and all. We need a familiarity with the Scriptures. We need to be well informed. We need to be armed with truth. Bible school for 4 years and seminary for 4 years. Trust me on this. I love theology and knowledge and growing in that. But what good is that if we are bone dry in our friendship with him? What good is any of that? And so these people are doing business. Meet me on the Sabbath. Just come to the gates. They'll let you in. Nobody cares. And Nehemiah says, whoa, shut it down. Sabbath begins at sundown. Lock the gates. He takes it one step further. Anybody that waits outside the gates for Sabbath to end, he goes, come back. Nobody camps out here. We're not open. Go home. These people rest on the Sabbath to be with their God. Do you rest? So just do a little self-inventory right now. Your life is like this. Lots of highs, lots of lows, lots of ups, lots of downs, lots of successes, lots of failures. When do you rest? When do you stop? When do you just be? The Bible says it should be once a week. College students, you're probably lucky if it was once a semester, right? I get 1 weekend a semester. That's when I rest. Gosh, what a tragedy. Business owners, I get 1 week a year. That's when I rest. What an awful life. That's terrible. And then, like Pat and I are looking at one another. Like, well, we get one night a month. That's when we rest. What? No. We need a lot of sleep so that I don't wake up tired for church, right? We need rest. We need to care for ourselves. It starts with the Sabbath. Your prioritization of your friendship with God will always be challenged. Here's the last thing that we see. The third challenge that they're faced with is that they personally are complicating what it means to live purely. And this is maybe the most obvious challenge. Quite simply, Christianity is about loving Jesus. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 11, would you return to the simplicity of knowing and loving Christ? That's it. We make it so many things. It's about loving Jesus, what he's done for you. And we will wander. We read in Nehemiah 13, verses 23 through 24, we see that the Jews had started marrying women that were foreigners. It says, in those days also I saw the Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and they couldn't even speak the language of Judah, but only the language of each people. And God made it pretty clear throughout his establishment of his people, like, I want you to be committed to me. Like, I'm setting you apart. And so live purely and let that impact even who you marry. And we see these people just don't care. Just don't even care. Time's gone on. Nehemiah's left, like, whatever. She's hot. Speaks a different language. Doesn't love my God. Doesn't know my God. That's okay. And God's like, what? Why? How quick you are to wander. Like, how quick you are to wander away from that. Like, I set up instructions for you because I want what's best for you. I set up guidelines for you because I have your best interests at heart. And just like Adam and Eve in the garden, the first thing we do is doubt God's heart for us. And the enemy says, did God really say? And we go, actually, yeah, it's a good point. I don't know why, if God did say that and why. And God's going, I know what I'm talking about. Like, I made you, and I made this earth that is now fallen and like sinful. Like, I know what I want for you. And it's just so easy for us to stray from that. And I don't know how many of you ever remember going to like youth camp in high school, or Hume Lake or some other camp. And like on night 3, you're just bawling, just tears, just journaling, 900 pages. And like you're drawing flowers at the shoreline and your feet get wet. And you're like, oh, the God's in the water. And just like everything, God is everywhere. And then a breeze comes and you're like, he's speaking to me. And you're just like, and then you go home and you say, I'm really on fire. A week later, what are you doing? A week later. I mean, come on. I don't know who you're making out with or what drug you're doing or what exam you're cheating on or whatever else 15-year-olds do to stray. But you're doing it. We're all doing it. And it's just like how quickly we are to wander, like how quickly we fade, how quickly we stray. And again, I'm not up here to beat you over the head with this. I'm no better than you. I do the same thing. The point is this. It's always going to be there. Those challenges, those ups and downs are there. And this is how the book ends. This is it. They build a wall. The people are restored. They've got a commitment. They do choirs. It's fantastic. And then this. See, in the New Testament, like, this is it. Chronologically, Nehemiah is one of the last books written in the Old Testament. 400 years later, we have the birth of Jesus. It's one of the last documented things historically for the people of God in about 430 BCE. Well done. And it'd be easy for us to judge them. It'd be easier for us to come down on them. But this is us, right? This is us. I celebrate, though, because this is where God finds you. I'm convinced of it. This is where God meets you. And so I don't know exactly where you are in life. Many of you, perhaps, are in one of those highs. Perhaps you just got done building a wall. Perhaps you're just getting engaged or just got married. You just found the right guy. You just got the right job. You just got the home. I mean, everything is falling into place. You just picked the major. And it's just like, this is it. God is with me. And maybe some of you are going like, gosh, I'm depressed. I'm alone. I have no friends. No one wants to go on a date with me. I can't find a job. My family's got drama. Fill in the blank. And you want to know something? God is in both of those places. He walks with us in both of those. And so I leave us with a couple sentiments, and that is, as you think about your walk with God, I just invite you, be people that are passionate. This is simply what the word passion means. Passion comes from the root word which means to suffer. Did you know that? The word passion comes from the root word which means to suffer. Anything you are passionate about, you suffer with and through it. That's why if you're a passionate fan, it is oftentimes suffering. And when you passionately love someone, you suffer through life with them. That is the idea of being passionate. And so my encouragement to us is that if you want to be a person of God, a passionate person of God, suffer well. Navigate through those highs and lows. Don't assume that if you're in the dumps, God is not near. Don't assume that you're doing something wrong if you're over there. Maybe that's true. Maybe you're neglecting things. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're just having threats hurled against you. Maybe you're just dealing with the drama that is life. It's okay. It is okay. I want to bring some normalcy to it. And I'll even take it a step further. And I'll close with this. When I started seeing a counselor about 6 years ago, still see him every week. He's my person. He's my person. Outside of my wife, of course. I see the guy every week. And you want to know something? About 6 months in, I am so task-oriented. I am such a people pleaser. 6 months in, I ask him this question. So, how am I doing? Like, am I doing good? Like, how am I, like, progressing? Like, is this working? And he just looks at me like, what? What are you talking about? Well, I just mean, like, am I doing this right? You're doing what right? Like life? Are you doing life right? Well, you know what I mean. Like, I got things I need to work through. Am I working through them? Like, yeah? And he was so baffled by my line of questioning because in my mind, I'm here, I need to be here. I'm here, I need to be here. Lows, I need to be high. If one uphill is followed by another uphill, then something is wrong. Like, when do I arrive? Am I getting closer? And he looks at me and goes, bro, you're just living life. And I'm here to help you process it. You can't do this right or wrong. You walk in the room, you're doing it right. And I was like, okay, so I'll get an A? I was like, you're an idiot. He's called me worse things than an idiot, by the way. But he's like, you're an idiot. Like, that's just not how it goes. And then I think, man, is this what we do in church? Am I doing okay? Oh, I'm in a low part. I got to get on fire. I got to get back on fire. What does that even mean? Stop focusing on who you think you should be. Start embracing exactly where you are. Stop spending so much time focusing on where you think you're supposed to be. Strike that word from your vocabulary. Supposed to be. Embrace where you are. Invite God into the ups and downs of your life. Remain passionate. Be a person of action. Be a person of intention that is always striving with God. Not for God, with God. This is how life goes. I love that Nehemiah 13 ends the way it does because this is life. I want us to be passionate people that are honest about highs and lows.